everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and this is my June reading wrap up. As I said in my June TBR video, it is the month of the queers, which means that my reading is predominantly, but not exclusively, going to be queer. I read queer books all year round. It is not something that is a novelty for me to only read once a month. I try to read my queer books all through the year. June for me is more about showcasing the queer books that I've read rather than trying to cram in all the queer books I've got. But that being said, my first book actually does have queer rep. I wouldn't say it's the predominant theme of the book, and I would say that it's very much more a subtle thing throughout that I really love that it wasn't made out to be such a big deal. The first read that I have had is one of my arcs from NetGalley that has been on there for quite some time now, and it's I Felt Myself Slipping. I can't remember the author name, it will be up here. This is a cute little graphic novel that features a group of gymnasts as they are training to hopefully get to nationals in a bid to get to the next Olympic Games. We have Riley and Kota. Riley has just moved to this town after her dad's died, and she specifically chose that gym because the coach knows sign language and Riley is deaf, uses a hearing aid, but without the hearing aid can't hear anything. There's a bit of a rough start. Kota tries to reach out. Riley's a little bit like, I'm just here to train, I don't want any friendships. But when we start to get further into the story, we start to unpack Riley's reasons for being like that, and she starts to let her walls down and lets Kota in. Through the book, Kota's kind of hinted at having a bit of a crush on Riley, and there are some moments where you think maybe they're about to sort of something's going to happen, but ultimately at the end of the book they are friends. And I do love that it didn't necessarily go down the romance route, and it did show that you can be friends with someone even if maybe you have a bit of a romantic feeling towards them. But it was just a really beautiful story of acceptance and supporting someone. It dealt with some topics such as grief as well as like the disability rep, and it also had a really beautiful message about communication, because Riley, obviously having the hard of hearing and being deaf, struggles to communicate, but also Kota's dad is Japanese, and he was saying to Kota that when he first moved over and fell in love with Kota's mum, he didn't really have very good English, so they used to communicate by writing to each other and writing things in notebooks. That is how Kota kind of starts reaching out to Riley, is by writing notes down and sharing her experiences with Riley, and I thought it was just a really beautiful story about that. I did have some big niggles with it though. The whole thing felt so rushed. I saw another review that encapsulated it perfectly, where it said it was a book with a lot of potential but none of it was quite executed properly. The sign language wasn't very well kind of defined, and it was just kind of like a series of little hand wiggles. We did get one bit that I thought was quite cute where it showed how to do the one-handed alphabet, but it just kind of felt like between one chapter and the next, and over the course of one summer, Kota seemed to go from knowing nothing to being almost fluent, and it was only a few weeks, and that kind of threw me for a bit of a loop. So it kind of gave a little bit of a almost unrealistic expectation of what it's like to learn sign language. It isn't this instantaneous thing that you're going to know immediately. It takes effort, and we didn't really get to see that effort and that building. The other thing that I found was with the gymnastics. It was great that it did show the gymnastics, and it showed like little panels where it was showing the sequence for the various routines, and it would show how things worked, but it just didn't really go super in depth, and it kind of felt everything was surface level, and the ending felt quite unsatisfactory to me. So while I appreciated what the author was going for, and I really did love the colours in this, it was all this kind of green, tealy blue colour palette, and I really did love that. But yeah, it just felt that the story itself needed 2 or 3 volumes to really get into it, and it could have gone a lot deeper, and it just felt like there was a lot of wasted potential. I did end up giving this one 3 stars. I would definitely check out more of their work to see if maybe it was just that one volume, or if things have changed in different stories and things that they've written. It was a cute one to start the month off, and as I'm doing the Amazing Readathon this month, it was the first prompt was to read a book with a green cover. The original book that I chose was very sci-fi and medical terminology and sciencey heavy. And while I've been on antibiotics and all of these other medications that have been messing with my brain, I could not retain anything. So this was the only thing I really had as a backup. But I am well into my second book for the month, and I'll talk more about that on the next update. But yeah. What is this? It's the 4th of the month and I've got book number 2. To be fair, this was mostly already finished when I entered June. All I had to do was finish the last couple of chapters. I had, I think, about 50 or 60 pages left to go. Judd and Brenna have my heart, my soul. They can demand anything from me and they will get it, because just my babies. You can tell I love these two so much because, I mean, look at how many tabs are in this thing. I think half this book is now highlights and tabs. And I've kind of got a little colour system going for each book I've picked. I've got 2 colours. So I have the, like in this one, blue is what's like their relationship and moments I love. And then in this one, purple is world building. And then I've got one that is really sticking out because it's a quote that's going to go into my quote book, which is, I will admit, with this one quote, Levy now really wants to read it. I knew you'd come. That's why I fought so hard. I knew that by the time I got tired, you'd be there. I love them so much. Basically, in the first book, Brenna was taken by the big bad of the book, and while she survived, she's been left with a lot of mental scars and certainly is having a rough time readjusting, and the person that took her did something to her brain that has unlocked a part of her brain that should never be unlocked. So now she's starting to show signs of having psi abilities, even though she is a wolf shifter, and everyone's like, oh, this is really bad. Judd is one of the psi. He and his family, they escaped from the psi system and now live with the wolves, and there is a connection between him and Brenna, and even like way before he even admits that there is something that he likes about her, he's just got this intensity when it comes to her. He's been there from the moment she was rescued. He's been at all of her healing sessions to provide Sasha, who's the one that's been healing her. He's given her like the extra strength and the extra power required to help, and so he's kind of been this quiet but calm force in the background helping Brenna. And we get moments even from the very first chapter where Brenna is struggling with her brothers being a bit overprotective, and he's just like, you need to back off because you're pushing her away. And there's like one moment where Brenna's in a room and it's got her alpha, her brothers, and a couple of other soldiers, and she's like, do you know the only person in this room who has never made me feel inadequate? Judd. And literally the whole room just goes and you sat there going, oh no. So yeah, just his quiet intensity is incredible. There's a couple of bumpy bits, like at one point he's doing it to protect her because he thinks that she shouldn't be with him, but he does say something to her that even I was like, oh, you deserve a slap for that. But just at no point does he stop and think that she is weak or that she can't look after herself, but he's there to kind of add to that protection. Meanwhile, on the flip side, she can see that he is hurting. She can see that there is more to him and that he has so much potential, and she's just like, no, you are not going to push me away just because we're a different species. Even when he explains the reason why he can't be with her, because his specific like psi skill set, he's telepathic, but he's got a secondary ability, and even within the psi community they fear it because it's so deadly and so dangerous. And yet she's just like, well, we'll find a way. And I just love how he's protective but not possessive with her, and she is defiant and will do anything to break through to, and I love their dynamic so freaking much. And a couple of things happen in this book as well that were just amazing. This is absolutely 5 stars, and it's just cemented even further that this is definitely one of the best in this series. And yeah, I'm just,
it's so good.
I don't know how many more of the side challenging I'll do this month because I have a lot of other stuff already on my TBR and I do want to kind of prioritize those, but I have a visitor. Hello. What? You come close, you'll pay the tax. Kitty tax. Okay, she hates me when I do that, but I don't care. Yeah, I've got a couple of other things on the go, so I'll talk about those when I get to those, but yeah, another one done. And we're only on day 4. I'm so glad to be back. Another one done. This is the 4th thing that I've finished so far this month. I've got a couple of other things that I've started, a couple more things that are in progress, but this is book 4. And so far this is like my favourite. Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. This is the sequel to the Cozy Fantasy Legends and Lattes. I read that last year. I did a cozy cottagecore reading vlog. Of the 2 books, Legends and Lattes is the one that has stuck with me the most. But I did have a couple of issues with it, and I thought to myself that I would need the sequel to do this a bit better, and it did. I still have a tiny issue with it. Well, I'll get into that in a second, but as far as ratings go, this one is a 4.5, so close to a 5-star. The very, very end, like just before the epilogue, had me tearing up, and at the end, I was like kicking. There was one tiny little line in the epilogue that had me kind of going and kicking my feet. So, you know, I did have a fantastic time with this. My biggest gripe, and I had the same issue with Legends and Lattes, and in my Discord group chat with Jona, James and Levy, James and I were talking about it yesterday, and we both agreed that in the first book, it just felt that everything was too easy. Everything just resolved too quickly, and it seemed like everything went Viv's way without too much conflict. And I know you're supposed to have low stakes with cozy, but it felt that it was too low. And I actually said, I like my fantasy like I like my meat. I like a medium steak. I feel that this is far more medium stakes than Legends and Lattes. There was this necromancer who was affecting, like, we didn't get a lot of information about what the necromancer had done and how she was impacting the world, but it was definitely more than just a personal thing. It was definitely the region was in trouble, and I did like that. I did feel that the resolution of that, though, was a little bit quick and felt a bit too easy again, but I did love how one of the characters was like, I cannot believe that worked. And I was like, at least in a way, Travis Baldree was kind of almost poking fun at his own book, like being like, yeah, I'm aware this was easy, but you know what? We're more here for the cozy. And I felt this one, compared to Legends and Lattes, had a lot more of that balance between action and cozy. I adored Thimble. I liked Viv, and Tandri I was a bit, whatever in Legends and Lattes, but in this, every single character, Galena is maybe the only one that I'm a bit, but every character I really enjoyed in this. Fern was just the best. I really love Ratkins in this world. So far, 2 out of 2 have just been my favourite character, and I never thought in my life that I would ever say that a homunculus skeleton called Satchel would become a favourite character of all time. But I loved him. He was just so wholesome. I also really liked the writing in this. I have 5 tabs with quotes that I really enjoyed in this. One that, as a reader, I think we all can relate to. Viv read until the wee hours, until she couldn't keep her eyes open, and her jaw creaked in an enormous yawn. Then she lay with the book face down and open across her chest as the sound of the storm crossed over the boundaries of sleep and colonised her dreams. I have fallen asleep reading multiple times, and my favourite time to read is during a storm. So that one really did get me. I was like, yes. One to do with sort of mental health. Viv says to Fern about that she's stuck in a tunnel, and Fern is like, what do you mean by that? And she says, you're just trying to make it to the other end, and while you're in it, there's nothing to either side. Only the way forward, you know, the tunnel. Maybe when you find a way out, you can look around, but until then... And I was like, oh, I have been in a few tunnels of my own. And then there's just a couple of moments where I really just love the descriptions. For example, there was one here. A couple of the characters are in danger. Viv doesn't even know if they're alive, but then finds out that they are, and it says, alive, both of them. A chunk of ice in Viv's chest melted all at once and her guts went watery with the runoff. And I was like, that's just really beautiful. And I feel like it really does describe that feeling you get when you've got that dread and you find out that it wasn't necessary. And when you get that palpable relief when, you know, you've been worried and dreading something, it turns out that you can relax. I feel that that described it so perfectly. It is like ice melting and then your stomach goes all because everything just drops into your stomach and everything relaxes. I did love a lot of the writing in this. I loved the characters and the world building was really good. I feel like we actually got a bit more from the world in this one. But yeah, this one did get me in the feels. It's about a bookstore. It had baking. It did have a lot that I love, and I feel like this is kind of the top end of cozy fantasy where it almost tips into sort of just standard fantasy. And I think I'm finding that that's what I prefer. I like having the cozy elements, but I don't like the entire story being about the cozy. I feel like that warrants a future vlog to experiment on this. But yeah, 4.5 stars, 4th book complete. For the Amazing Readathon, we have Faceoff weekend this weekend, which is to read as many books as you can. I will be doing a separate vlog for that, so I'm hoping to get through about 10 to 15 manga. I'm now going to go and start book 5, that is a poetry collection. I want to get that done before 4 PM so that when I go out with my uncle, I can just come straight home and get started on the Faceoff. Hopefully I'll be back very soon with another update. Book 1, DNF. I am not enjoying it. The stories are very muddled and kind of don't really have a set flow to them, and it just reinforces that I am not a fan of short stories. I thought this was going to be cute and wholesome, but so far I've read 3 stories and all 3 have just been kind of illogical and no real depth to them. I feel like the translation is very clunky and it just, sometimes reading it, it does not make sense. So unfortunately, DNF. The first actual completed one is done, and it's not going great. I've had a DNF and a 2.5 star so far. We're starting great. But the square that I landed on was to try a new author, and I had a bunch of arcs off of NetGalley, Kodansha Comics. Are you wet? Hi. Are you wet? Is it raining? Yeah, yes it is. I every few months go on there, see what's on there, especially as I am a big manga reader. And of all of my arcs, I'm more likely to get to the manga than I am the actual books. But yeah, this one I am a little bit behind. This one came out I think in April. And this one is I Want to Love You Until Your Dying Day Volume 1. It's a boarding type orphanage thing where the kids are trained in magic to fight in this war. And then we follow, I've already forgotten one of the main characters, but we follow her. Her roommate has just been killed in this war, and then this mysterious other girl turns up this one night. She talks to her, and the next day is told, oh, this is Mimi, and she is your new roommate. And the thing with Mimi is it's kind of like the school has one student who is picked to be like the elite of the elite, and that student is called Mimi. This is the Mimi, and then now in a shared room accommodation type thing. The world building is awful. We do not know why is there this war? What is this war? How does the magic work? We get such a vague, well, for the what the war is, how it happened, who's involved, we've got nothing. We do not know a single thing in this entire first volume. In terms of the magic and how that all works, we get told they've got wands, and then they've mentioned mana a couple of times but not actually explained how it works or what it does. The only thing we've really seen or had any, and even then it's not been explained, we've just been shown it, is that when they kiss they can transfer mana to each other at points. It means that they can heal. And our main character at one point, they do like this drill where they've got to take down these sort of fake enemies. She gets injured, her arm is cut off, and Mimi kisses her and regrows her arm, and it's like, it made me uncomfortable because I was expecting these to be kind of 14, 15-year-old girls, and In that case, I would have been a lot more comfortable with like the kissing and things like that. I still would have been a little bit uncomfortable, but the age rating on these is older teen, which means 16 plus. The characters are 10. And we have already had 3 or 4 kissing scenes between them, and it's not like innocent, you know, like little children sometimes do, where they'll innocently kiss. There's one in here who are an established couple saying I love you, and it's implied that they've already done other things. I'm like, they are 10. That immediately is red flag for me. So that did not make me very comfortable, and like I said, the world building was really awful and just not very well explained. I didn't like the nurse character. Not only was she dressed extremely slutty, she was like, oh, I hope it's not her first kiss, and then licked her lips. Ew, no. So, nah, I am out. The only reason I think it got a 2.5 and not lower is because the art was really well done. I did really enjoy the art style, and I gave that a 7, but everything else was like a 3 or 4. So yeah, wasn't a fan of that one, but at least it means another arc is off my shelves. Really disappointed in that one, and yeah, I do not recommend at all. Hi. How's it going? Big stretch. Here's your camera. No, 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 don't you dare. Don't you dare. Thank you. I ended up scrapping my plans. In the last clip or something like that, I was saying about the 48-hour Faceoff weekend, and that my plan was to do a separate vlog with all of my manga because I was going to try and read like 15 to 20 manga volumes. Well, that happened, firstly, from like building it and then filling it and then all of the artwork, and that took about 5 hours. Then various things that I ended up getting distracted with meant that over the 2 days I only actually got about 7 done when I was aiming for a minimum of 15. And I woke up this morning going, oh god, I've got to try and cram all of this manga in. And I was like, well, all I'm going to be doing then is rushing to read rather than just enjoying the reading. I'm not doing a separate vlog, which means I've now got to try and condense, how many was it, did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 into small bits. So I'm going to start with My Hero Academia. I did volumes 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I did get 5 volumes of My Hero Academia done. We are now into my absolute favourite arc, which is the Shie Hisaikai arc. The student where I was saying in the previous arc where someone was taken, that's all been resolved, but then there was a huge world effect of that, and especially affecting All Might. So there was a 1 or 2 volumes where we were dealing with that fallout and the emotions that go with that, and it kind of got me a little bit. Then there was the first years got entered into the provisional hero license exam. So it basically means that, kind of like with your provisional driving license, it means that they are technically now heroes, but they're not like fully fledged heroes, but they are now allowed to do hero work as long as they are under supervision of a pro hero. And so the ones that have their provisional license, because not everyone did, a few people and a couple of surprising people did not get, but the ones that did get their license, they can now do what's called work studies, which means that they can work under very specifically approved heroes in order to get more experience. So that's where we lead into the Shie Hisaikai arc, which is my absolute favourite arc of all time in this series. It just, every single time. Deku Midoriya, when he joins his agency on his very first day, he's paired up with Mirio Tagata, who is called Lemillion, who is an amazing character. They are on patrol, and this little girl runs out of an alley into Deku. He immediately senses something is wrong. She's covered in bandages, she's crying, she's like, help me. And he's like, what the hell? And then this guy follows her out. Turns out he is the leader of basically the Yakuza has died out since heroes became a thing, only he wants to bring it back. And he's like, oh, she's just trying to run away and trying to cause trouble. And Midoriya's like, hell no, you are not taking her. And Lemillion's like, we need to let him, something's clearly not right here, we've got to report this, let's go. So they report it all back, and at the same time that that's happening, there's this new drug that's been introduced to the world. Well, there's two new drugs. One enhances someone's abilities beyond measure and gives you sort of like a 20 times power boost. The other one cuts off your quirk altogether and renders you completely unable to use your powers. What ends up happening is all of these different hero agencies come together with different pieces of the puzzle, and they realise that what's happening is this guy, Kai Chisaki, is using the little girl Eri and his own quirk to create these drugs, and that she is being held at the headquarters of the Shiei Hisaikai. So now we're at the point where they're about to go and go on the rescue mission, and that arc, like getting the information, we are introduced to some of my absolute favourite characters in this arc, because I do adore Eri. She just, I mean, anything with a kid in distress, I'm gonna be like fully invested. In particular, her story is so sad, but also so beautiful. We've been introduced now to Mirio. We've also got the big three at UA, who are sort of the third year about to graduate, and they're the closest ones to becoming heroes. And everyone's like, even Mirio is not, he's not just big three of UA, he's already good enough to be considered one of the top pro heroes. That's how good he is. And he was the original successor to take over from All Might before All Might met Midoriya. And so, you know, there's this whole story with that. So yeah, we're now going into that rescue mission, and honestly, the emotions and the stakes and everything is just so high. It took everything in me yesterday to put this morning to put my tablet down and go to sleep, because the next 2-3 volumes are my favourites, volumes sort of 16, 17, 18. Just, yeah. So that's where I'm at with my hero. Then I decided to give a couple of my NetGalleys, well, one of my NetGalley arcs that I've had for a while, which was Dead Rock Volume 1. I didn't realise at first that this was from the same author as Fairy Tail. I've never watched or read Fairy Tail, so I was like, oh, didn't recognise the name. So I did have a quick look, and it is not associated. There's a couple of characters where that author is known to, that they all pop up no matter what he writes, but the worlds themselves and the stories are not interlinked. So I was like, oh, thank God I don't have to go back and do all of Fairy Tail to understand what's going on. But this is a world where we start at the start of entrance exam, and essentially it's a place called Dead Rock. It's a school in the demon world. I personally think it's a little bit too similar to My Hero Academia in this aspect, in that they've got students who came in on special recommendation, and those who didn't have to do an entrance exam where they have to defeat these monsters, and only the top X amount get through. But the demon world itself has different layers, and basically the students that can make their way through each of the different levels is basically given a piece of the mortal world that is theirs. And so we've got all of this year's entrance. We're introduced to a few characters. I've already forgotten everybody's name. Our main character, I was kind of like, whatever. I had a few moments where I giggled a bit, because like there was one of the characters that he becomes friends with steps on him and he thinks he's dead, and then he's like, wait, I'm not dead, I'm okay. And that kind of made me laugh. And I did like some of the humour in this, but there were a few things. For one, it's supposed to be a 13 and up. There's fan service. There's always, 99% of the time, if a man is writing manga, there's gonna be fan service. So I didn't like that, but there were 1 or 2 panels where I'm like, this is not appropriate for a 13-year-old to be looking at. I'm sorry, it's not. Because it showed like the current god being naked, and even though you don't see like everything, he's got very clearly naked women all draped around him. And I'm like, that is not appropriate for 13. And I know Japan is different, but when they're releasing it in North America, they looked at that and went, yeah, that's fine. Yet they ban the most stupid of books for the most stupid of reasons. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, that's a rant for another day. We are reining it in. So first of all, I don't think it should be the age range that they say. I think it should be older teen. and be 16 and up, not 13 and up, just my 2 cents. Also not really a big fan of the art style. There are 1 or 2 characters that I really like the style of, but the main character himself just seems very cartoonish compared to the others, and he's one of those characters it's only when he gets serious that the art actually becomes decent, and I'm not a fan of that. I did have a great time with the humour. I did think it was a pretty decent cast of characters, and a few events happened, like one of the students, because basically the 7 that make it through that end up in their own class, and they're kind of the rejects class, and one of them decides to challenge the school kitchen chef for some weird reason. Oh, because he finds out that some of the meals they eat are, because one of the rules of this place is anyone can kill anyone. There are no holds barred. You can just do what you want. And sometimes if someone gets killed and they're in the cafeteria, the demon chef will just add them to whatever's cooking. One of the students finds out, is like, I challenge you, gets killed. One of the other students, who is a necromancer, brings him back, and he's now her puppet. And that dynamic is, so there are certain bits that really have caught my interest. I'll give it at least 1 or 2 more volumes just to see if I will enjoy it, because at the minute I'm kind of 50-50, but I did give it 3.5 stars, and I think it's an interesting enough premise, even if I do feel it's a little bit too similar to things like, kind of got a 3-way combo for me, because you've got sort of Assassination Classroom, My Hero Academia with the sort of school setting and the entrance exams and all of this, and then there's Sword Art Online with like the different levels that you've got to play through to sort of win. I know no idea is completely unique, but at the minute I'm feeling like it's too similar to other things that I've either read or watched before. But I shall see how it goes. Because, you know, Mao I thought was going to be Inuyasha 2.0 and so far hasn't entirely been. Then the final one that I read that almost got 5 stars, if it wasn't for the fact it needed to have more volumes. I needed more in this story. I wanted like 10 volumes of watching this unfold and this relationship develop. But we have a vampire in the bathhouse. Basically, when I was still doing, because this was the board for the Amazing Readathon, I do want to acknowledge that I printed it out and I did do rolls on it and everything. But one of them that I landed on was an animal on the cover, and I had nothing for my manga. So I was like, oh God, ran onto NetGalley because Kodansha Comics, fun little insider info, Kodansha Comics, 99% of their books are just available to read. They're just read now, so you don't have to request them. So you can just go on, get a few manga to start getting your ratings and reviews up. And I was like, let's see, maybe they'll have something available, and I found a vampire in the bathhouse. I thought this was going to kind of be one of those really kind of wacky stories where things maybe weren't entirely logical and maybe were going to be a bit jumpy. It ended up being so cute, so wholesome, and I had a fantastic time. So we've got this vampire who is feeling his age a bit. He's starting to creak and groan and struggle. In his realm, he's managed to get human technology, so he watches on the TV and sees an advert about a bathhouse. So he just gets his assistant to teleport him to a bathhouse. Enter Sakura, who is the grandson of the bathhouse owners who works there. He and his 7-year-old little brother, I can't remember his full name, but he's called Yume. Their parents are off working abroad, so they live with the grandparents and they help out around the bath. And basically the vampire is like, hey, I want a bath here, I can stay. And Sakura's like, well, one of our employees has just gone on to paternity leave, won't be back for a while. How about you stay and take his place? The one thing that I did feel uncomfortable with is the way the vampire's magic works is it runs on mana, and when his mana gets too low, he needs to replenish. Different demons and different beings need different ways. So there's one where he's an ice demon, so just eating ice replenishes his mana. Vampire, blood. He bites Sakura to get his mana up, but he doesn't really explain it. He just bites him, and only afterwards he's like, oh, you're now bonded to me and you're now my sole source of mana. Oh, and by the way, if my mana depletes completely, the only way I can get it is to have sex with the person that I'm bonded to. And Sakura's like, whoa, what the hell? Why would you bite me then? And I'm like, fully understandable, because consent what? Consent where? Consent who? just like that bit was not the greatest. However, I will say that even though there are hints that those two will go into a romance eventually, we don't see it on page, and even at the end they're not like established as a couple. The vampire is very kind of, oh, he's mine, and Sakura is very tender towards him and is more gentle and soft towards him, but they haven't sort of, you know, crossed into relationship territory. And I actually really loved that because it kind of felt like a more realistic build to a relationship. Would I have loved to have seen them actually end up established by the end? Yes, but this is also current, at least as far as I know, this is a one-shot manga and is only 200 pages. They had a lot going on that they tried to fit in, so it did have a little bit of the whole missing out quite a lot of what I would consider moments, because obviously they're like, oh, it's been months, and so we skipped quite a few big chunks, which I didn't like, which is why I feel like there should have been more volumes to really go into it. But honestly, just Yume in particular is such a cute little kid, and there were just so many tender moments. I kind of just loved watching the story about the community, and there's this like evil demon that crosses over from the night world and is like, I'm going to take everything you love, because he hates the vampire. He's like, I'm going to take everything you love and claim it as my own. And Sakura's like, well, don't do that, and sort of shows him the community in the bathhouse and why it's not a good idea to like destroy it. I just had a really great time. It's very clear from the offset, the vampire, I can never remember his name, he really likes Sakura, and even at the very start when he bites and he's like, oh, I'd need to have sex with you, Sakura's like, what? And he's like, well, gender doesn't mean anything to me. I don't look at someone for their gender, I go by their soul, and you've got a pure soul. So there is LGBT rep in the form of the titular vampire is at least bisexual, if not sort of pan. And I do like the fact that it was just a very soft, gentle, non-explicit, not even like confirmed that they're in a relationship boy love manga. And I would like to see more of those. But it was also extremely funny at times, very wholesome. Like I said, the only issue I had with it is I wish it had been over more volumes so we could have spent more time building their relationship. I like those slice of life moments and watching people fall in love, and this one kind of felt like it skipped some of that. But it was a fantastic time. The artwork was, I gave it 10 out of 10 because this artwork, gorgeous, absolutely stunningly beautiful. But yeah, 4.5 stars for that. And those are, I think, all of the manga that I'm up to date with. But now that I've decided I'm not doing the vlog, I can kind of chill. So my plan is to now go and just play some video games and give myself a day off. So I'm gonna go do that. So we have another update, and I have officially now got a new boy love manga to my green list of like boy love manga that I approve of. We have My Ultramarine Sky. This is set in a high school, and we've got Kai and Ren, who have known each other for about 5 years, and all through middle school and for the first year of high school they were in the same class. They've been like best friends. They're very, very different to each other. Kai's extremely outgoing, Ren is very kind of introverted, but the two of them have had this really solid friendship. About 2 years before this story starts, Kai realised that he was starting to have feelings for Ren, and at the start of this book, where they've been separated now in their second year of high school and they're now in separate classes, he's really struggling with not having Ren there all the time. He goes to Ren's classroom one day and Ren's kind of fallen asleep at his desk, and he sits down in front of him. He confesses, only to find that Ren is actually awake and heard everything. Only Ren kind of plays it off because they've had this little dynamic thing, like skit thing going on, where they joking around and with their other friends they kind of act as if they're in a boy love drama and they reenact scenes and things. So Ren kind of plays it off as, oh, he's just doing that, and like, oh, that's real commitment though because our friends aren't here. Only internally he's going, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, is this real? If so, what do I do? And so yeah, we just follow this story of these two, one already in love, one starting to have his view shifting into maybe the reason I've been really struggling not having him around is because I feel the same way. I've just never realised, and I've never been able to put it into words before. It was just so well done. None of the usual issues that I have with boy love were prevalent. There was no sort of the forcing, which happens quite a lot, where one of them admits a confession to the other and then almost bullies them into a romance. None of that was there. There was at no point did anyone feel pressured into anything. Nothing was non-consensual, and it didn't even go that far into the romance itself. Like, it wasn't one of those ones where they've just got together and suddenly they're, and it's usually one of them pressures the other one into having sex. There was none of that. It was very gentle, very PG, but it was also really beautiful, and they were properly communicating once they got to that point of feelings and talking each other through things. And what I also really liked, which is again something I see a lot in boy love and in romance in general, when one likes the other and feels it's not being reciprocated, they turn into absolute dicks and start treating the other one like dirt for no real reason. None of that was present. It was really well written, and I actually really want to check out more from this author now. So if you want a boy love that's wholesome, well written, and doesn't have any sort of, I didn't spot any inherent red flags that would really make me uncomfortable. You might still do, but I didn't, and I absolutely loved it. So definitely check this one out. I've given it 4.5 stars because it did need a little bit more for me. I would have liked to seen a little bit more conversation and a little bit more time developing that romance. Maybe if it was a duology, that would have worked better for me. But I think for what it had and what it was doing, it worked really, really well, and I definitely recommend it if you do like boy love but you have the same sort of issues that I have with it. This one goes on my green flag list. But that is the end of Face-Off weekend. I still have a whole ton of things to get read, so I'm just going to crack on, keep going. Hopefully I'll be back soon with another update. This one's very, very quick because there is a lot of noise around me. There's the fan is on, my uncle's in the kitchen banging around, so there's a lot of noise. So this one's going to be very quick. But I have two that I've completed since yesterday. The first one is an audiobook, Black Heart Nights. I'm not talking about this in this wrap up at all, because it is in my bookishly compatible video that I did reading some of Jona's favourites, so please do go check that out if you want my full thoughts. But I will say I did enjoy it. I gave it 4.5 stars, but if you want to know more about my thoughts, please do go check it out. It was so good. The second one that was a 5-star, so yet another 5-star for my manga reading, is My Hero Academia Volume 16. Like I said, the Shie Hisaikai arc is my absolute favourite. Volume 16 is the volume before my absolute favourite volume in the series that I've read so far. And yeah, this one we get Kirishima, we get more of his origin story and see him just become an absolute monster in the best kind of way. We also get Sunny to have some epic moments, and Fat Gum, who is one of my favourite characters, it's just such a powerful one. And I love that yet again we're getting more of a focus on some of the side characters and getting to know them more, and getting some real breakthrough moments with those characters, realizing how epic they actually are. So that one was obviously another 5 stars. I'm having such a good time rereading this series, and I kind of do wish I'd done this as a separate vlog series, but whatever. So yeah, that's what I've done in the last 24 hours. So finished an audiobook, I did 60% of it, and then this manga I'm gonna go because it's very hot, very noisy, and I'm also struggling with other body functions, so yeah, gonna head off. But that's where I'm at today. Another day, another book. I worked out last night that I have read, including these two that I'm going to talk about, I have read 8 books and 16 manga so far this month. I'll start very quickly with the manga. We have Blue Exorcist Volume 3. This one I really, really liked. It had a couple of characters introduced that I love. First of all, we have Kuro, who is a demon cat. He's been the guardian to the gates of this place for a while. In older times, he used to be given gifts and the locals used to celebrate him and believe in him. But as time goes on, traditions wither and die. He was left forgotten until eventually they bulldozed his shrine and he went absolutely fucking ballistic. So the locals called in True Cross Academy and they sent their paladin, who was Father Fujimoto in the first volume, the one that raised Rin and Yukio. And he managed to calm Kuro down, and then Kuro became his companion. And then in this, Kuro's found out through people gossiping, he's found out about Fujimoto, and so he's gone batshit and is like, he can't be dead, he's too strong, he's too powerful. So Rin and Yukio, well, Yukio is sent to deal with it. Rin tags along without Yukio knowing, but because of Rin having his sort of demon abilities, he can hear what Kuro is saying, and is like, hey, he's not angry, he's not rampaging, he's sad. And like, the anime every single time has me tearing up, and I could hear the voices. I hear voices, but I heard their voices from the anime like when I was reading this, so I was crying and tearing up with it. And then this is also the one that introduces Shura, who is like originally disguised as one of their classmates and then reveals who she really is. And it turns out she's pretty high up the chain and has been asked by Fujimoto that if anything ever happens to him, can he take over looking after Rin and help train him to become a weapon against Satan. And so she's all like, I'm going to test you and all of this. And then we also get a Maimon, who is one of the demons, who is also technically Rin and Yukio's half-brother, because he is also a son of Satan. So he's like, I don't really understand what the big deal is with you. So we got quite a lot of introductions to characters, or we started to get to know a couple of characters. I laughed a few times, I got a little bit emotional once or twice, so it was a really good time. I've given this one 4.5 stars because we did get quite a lot going on, and I felt it was a really good sort of step up in the story. Plus, there's a cat that cries. I kind of can't not rate that high, you know? It's me, it's a cat, it's gonna be rated high. And then the one that got me kind of like, oh, the frustration is real when you have been loving a book and the whole way through a book you've been like, I think this is gonna be 5 stars. And then the ending just completely lets everything down and you're suddenly like, oh, what? I finished reading this and I was just sat there like this for a good few minutes. I am so torn because the whole way through this book it was dark, it was delicious, it was gorgeous writing, and yeah, we had a couple of moments where there were these random kind of threads of thought that seemed a little bit out of place, but I knew that eventually they would be clarified, and they were. It still meant I was confused when I was reading them, but eventually I understood and it was clarified. But then there was like one thing with one of the characters where I knew where it was going. So I spent the majority of the book waiting for that thing to happen and waiting for it, and then when it did, because I was like, it's gonna really change that character and it's gonna have a massive profound effect and we're gonna really see a change in that character once it happens. And then it happened and it was like nothing. The whole way through there was this steady hum of anticipation and just relishing in the writing, like it was with when I read Addie LaRue. And it was, you know, mostly vibes. There were a couple of moments where I felt the pace was dragging and I was a bit like, okay, I'm kind of bored now. Can we either move on or change perspectives? So I think it did have a bit of a problem with being a bit draggy in parts. There was also one character who came into it. I fell in love with him. He then disappeared out and I genuinely spent the last few pages expecting that he was going to really turn up again and that X character was going to be him. And it wasn't. Now, and I've spoken to Steph from Coffee Over Apples and even she was like, yeah, I thought the same. I was expecting him to come back and it felt like a really missed opportunity because that could have been really great. What was it I said to Steph? I think it was like, how can this ending be both everything and nothing at the same time? I think it got stuck between wanting a climactic ending but also wanted to stay whimsical, and instead it kind of became a bit jumbled and ended up as a non-ending. I would definitely say if you didn't like the story of Addie LaRue but you liked the writing style, you will love this. Whereas if you didn't like the writing style in Addie LaRue, I would definitely say try a different Schwab, like go for something more like Darker Shades or her Vicious, like villain series, where the writing is a lot less sort of whimsy and lyrical. But I thought the writing in this was absolutely stunning. I really liked all of the characters. I liked the way that a couple of the characters throughout the book felt a bit ambiguous, and I was even tricked into being like, wait, is that this person? And I spent half the book convinced about this thing to do with one of the characters, and I even messaged Steph and I was like, I would put my life on this. And I was wrong. And I was like, oh, shoot. Okay, so there were things that kept me guessing. It was an interesting take on the vampire lore. I really loved the idea of how if they can go into churches, they can go into religious buildings. It's the actual ground where people are buried is where they've got to be careful, because the soil of the dead is what will kill them, kind of thing. And it was so interesting. It really was a new take on, or a new take to me on vampire lore, and I found that very intriguing. I've got a few quotes. I've got some tabs of where examples of how gorgeous the writing is. One of my absolute favourite moments, he called her bitch, demon, whore, so many invectives spilling from his bloodied mouth. Now it opens and closes without a sound, and his chest hitches with every shallow breath. Sabine might have killed him faster if he hadn't been so rude. Just, I love that. And then when the same guy, when he finally is like further on, says, his eyes are trained on nothing, his sluggish heart fighting against the downward pull of death. You know, moments like that, chills. I was like, oh. And like I said, it's dark, delicious, seductive, everything I love. And V. Schwab is one of the few writers who I do love when she writes. Very atmospheric and very lyrical. So it definitely got extremely high marks for the writing, and my intrigue was very high throughout, but like I said, it did lose a little bit for me with the pacing and the ending. I'm not a fan of ambiguous endings to begin with, and this wasn't completely ambiguous, but it definitely felt rushed, and it definitely left things a little bit more open than I would have liked. I have given this one 4 stars. It's a very low 4-star. Like, I think if I'd have scored anything, I think if there was like 2 that I'd scored lower, it would have been a 3.5, but it did hit the 4 stars, and again cemented my love for V. Schwab's writing. But yeah, that's where I'm at so far. I am aware this video is very long already. We've still got 5 days, and I still have at least 2 more books and probably 2 or 3 more manga to go. So if this video is under an hour when it comes to posting, I will be shocked. I'm gonna go because I have even more to read. I've just been going through all of my clips and I've written down every single book that I have completed so far, and then going through the clips that I've recorded to see where I'm up to and what I'm up to date on, and there were a few that were missing. So first of all, I mentioned in an earlier clip about Black Heart Nights and how I did that for a vlog, so you have to go check that out. I have 4 more books. I'll tell you what I gave the star rating, but in terms of my further thoughts, you will need to go check out the Bookishly Compatible video. For that, we have How to Bite Your Neighbour and Win a Wager by DM Bryn. I gave 3.5 stars. Little Slice of Hell by Cleo Evans, I gave 3 stars. Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan, I ended up DNFing. Didn't see that one coming. And 3 of Hearts by Lillian Lark is another one that I gave 3.5. Do check out my thoughts on those. I'm not going to go into detail here because this video is long enough as it is. Another DNF that I had pretty early on in the month is The Bone Library by Jenny Fagan. I was reading this for the Amazing Readathon as part of the chilling cover because it had a skull on the front. As much as I can appreciate that Jenny Fagan probably is a master of the craft and is a renowned poet, I just didn't understand a single word. And it wasn't just me. I put a couple of the poems in my group chat and all of us were like, what? And I was like, I do not understand poetry. It is not a thing I think I'm ever going to get on with. So I think I'm just gonna, I've tried a couple of poetry things and I've really not gotten on with them. So I think I just have to accept I'm not a poetry person, and move on. And then all that's left is a bunch of manga. So the first one we have is One Piece Volume 15. This one actually got rated a little bit lower than I have been. On average, I've been giving it a 4 to 4.5. This one got 3.5. It felt like a bit of a filler volume, which isn't a bad thing. They happen in every single series. You always get some filler episodes, filler volumes. And this one was definitely a bit of a filler. Yes, we were introduced to a new region. We do have some stakes going on because Nami has fallen mysteriously ill, and the only doctor on the island lives on top of this mountain. And you follow Sanji and Luffy, who are trying to go and find the doctor, and they've taken Nami with them, only we then learn on the ground that the doctor is actually in a different town and is not currently on the mountain. And as that's happening, we've got the old ruler of this place who was cast away. He's come back with his group and they've become pirates since they were ejected and overthrown, and he wants revenge. So he's now heading up the mountain to reclaim his home and take revenge on the citizens. So, you know, it's setting everything up and it's building into a story, but it definitely did feel it had a little less of the atmosphere that I enjoy, and it did feel like it was a little bit more slow paced. And again, I appreciate that. I don't need every single volume to be super fast paced and to be chaotic, but it definitely just wasn't my favourite that I've read so far. I then continued on with My Hero Academia. The last update was volume 16. We then had the climax of the Shie Hisaikai arc. It did what it always does. It made me cry. I was tearing up, and Eri is just a precious little being that must be protected at all costs. And one of the heroes, he's like 8 foot tall and about the same width kind of thing, but when he's at the limits of his powers, he becomes this really super buff with just pure muscle, and it was just like, what? Like, he's a gorgeous character anyway. I love Fat Gum's personality. I absolutely adore just how he does occasionally get a bit worried and concerned, but his general outlook is very positive and optimistic, and I love that about him. But then to suddenly see him super serious and super muscly, I was just like, huh? And even though I knew it was coming, I still did a little like, whoa! We had a couple of really amazing moments. So I mentioned before that they have had to do an exam in order to get their provisional hero licenses, and a few of the characters didn't pass that exam, and so they've been doing these kind of remedial classes, and we had a fantastic moment there watching them come together. And I've said it before that I love it when they all come together, but with this one they got given a challenge that they had to do, and there was this beautiful moment where they suddenly realised this is what we need to do, and seeing it all come together was just so beautiful. And one of the characters in particular goes through a bit of a character, I think, evolution. There's a little shift there and something starts to click a little bit more, and I love seeing that. And yeah, we then now are very firmly into the next arc, which is the school festival arc, where it's a thing that happens in Japan. Schools during summer do these little festivals, and each classroom will do its own stall or a presentation or something like that. And Class 1A decide that they're going to put on a musical performance to basically try and cheer everyone up, because they are aware that it's because of them that the school had to go into lockdown. Like, not their fault exactly, but they know that because they've been targeted, that's why everyone's now on lockdown. It's why with the festival, it's not just open to the public like it normally would be. And the other students are feeling that strain. They're feeling that fear, the stress. A lot of them hold it against Class 1A. So they're like, right, let's do something to try and boost everyone's spirits. And we're at the stage where the one that I've just read is the day of the festival, and Midoriya had to go and pick up some supplies very quickly. Only he runs into a villain called Gentle Criminal, who has decided that today is the day that he's going to infiltrate UA to try and gain exposure for his antics. Only the school have said that if anything remotely happens, then they're going to shut down the festival, and they Class 1A and Deku knows that if that happens, the whole school is going to turn against them and hate them forever. So he's like, absolutely not. And that's where we've ended up with everyone back at UA being like, where's Deku? We need to get everything started. And Deku's kind of like fighting for his life to stop this guy from reaching the school and disrupting the day. So yeah, having a great time. The next volume is another one that's in my all-time favourites, but obviously I'll talk about that when I get to it, which may or may not be this month. I don't yet know. And then the very final one is the first 3 volumes. I have it here. Well, I have volume 3 of Blue Exorcist by Kazue Kato. In this one we follow twin brothers Rin and Yukio. Rin growing up has always been very explosive, very aggressive, easy to rile up, extremely expressive, while Yukio was always very shy, very reserved, very quiet, and relied on Rin to kind of protect him. They were adopted as newborns by Father Fujimoto, and they have been raised by this church because their mother died giving birth to them. And then once they turn 15, Rin discovers that neither of them are actually normal, but he especially. It turns out that they are both the sons of Satan. That is what ended up causing their mother to pass away, and because Rin was the older twin born, Satan's powers transferred into him, so now he's realised that he has these demonic abilities, and he also discovers that Yukio, while shy, quiet and reserved, has also secretly been training to become an exorcist, and is already a fully qualified exorcist in his own right and has gone on missions and things. He then discovers that his adoptive father was also an exorcist, and that basically he has spent his life raising Rin in order to protect him from himself and the outside world, and unfortunately it doesn't quite work. Satan does find him, takes over Fujimoto's body to try and unleash Rin and, you know, open the Gehenna Gate, which is basically the gate to hell, and cause chaos. But Father Fujimoto manages to survive just long enough to stop that from happening, but in the process it does mean that Rin now has access to his demon powers. He's been exposed, and the only way to really protect him is either to give him up to the Knights so that they can, or join up True Cross Academy, become an exorcist in his own right, and use his powers for the world of good and destroy Satan. And that's what he chooses to do because, you know, death, life, nothing, revenge. Yeah, no. So now we're following on those adventures. At volume 3, we've kind of met his classmates. There's a bit of conflict there where some of them are like, who is this guy? A lot of them don't think he's taking it seriously. He never thought he was going to continue in education. He wanted to just, you know, cook food. He just wanted to be a chef. And now he's doing this thing that he never expected or wanted. There's a bit of a dynamic between him and Yukio as well, because Yukio didn't get any of Satan's powers, yet knowing that he is still the son of Satan and that he is Rin's brother, he's got that. He wants to protect him, but he also hates everything his brother stands for and everything his brother is, which means he also kind of has a bit of self-loathing in there, and there's a gap between them. So we're slowly but surely starting to be introduced to all of the characters and their strengths and weaknesses. My favourite character is actually this one, which is Shiemi. She is the daughter of sort of botanist type, and is the herbologist who supplies a lot of the herbs and plants that the exorcists need to use to do their thing. And at first she's got a bit of a curse and is very weak. Rin and Yukio help break her out of that, and she ends up also joining the school. And then she learns that she is a summoner, and she can summon this little green man called Ni. And she has her own unique name, so when it comes to exams they're like, you clearly know what you're doing, you need to learn the proper names to things, and she's just so adorable. In an earlier clip I did talk a bit more about volume 3, so yeah, that's where I got to. Including DNFs, we're on I think 27 things this month. Reading slump has gone, I've now gone into the euphoria. Anyway, I'm gonna go. Hopefully I should have at least 2 more updates this month, but we shall see. But that's where I'm at so far. This video is gonna be insanely long. I finally got to, I think this is one of my last Yauk books from 2022, but we have The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen. I feel like if I'd have read it on a different day, it would have had a bigger impact on me. It was really sweet and really lovely. I did enjoy it, but I was reading it when I was extremely tired and was in an active migraine yesterday. In this, we have Tien, who is the son of Vietnamese immigrants who wanted to start a better life and give him a better chance with life. I think he's 13 in this, or about to turn 13, and he knows that he is gay but doesn't know how to tell his parents because it's not a word that is in the Vietnamese language that he knows, and he's also really scared of rejection and also the things that he's seen and read on TV. This is also set in the 90s, where there was a lot more rampant, like, even though homophobia is still really bad today, during the 90s with the AIDS paranoia, it was a really, really rough time. And I wasn't even an adult in the 90s. I have only learnt about a lot of this as an adult because I don't remember it being a little child. In the child bubble that I was in, I just was oblivious to a lot of it. So, you know, it really was a hard time, and he's struggling to communicate with his parents, hey, I think I'm gay. But one of the things that he and his parents do, we get a tiny bit from his mum's perspective, where she was saying that he's had different phases and interests growing up that he's grown out of, like dinosaurs and things like that. But then she was saying that the one thing he's always loved are fairy tales, and it's the one thing that the family do together to have that bond, but also it helps with the parents learning English. They read fairy tales out loud to one another in English. And then there's a story that they start reading, and his mum's like, this is very similar to our version of Cinderella. It leads to discussions around that. But as the story goes on, there is we learn very early on that the mum wants to go back to Vietnam because she's not seen her family and her mother since she left. But now they have citizenship, so they're free to travel without the worry that they can't get back. And unfortunately, they do get some really sad news, and his mum flies off. And while she's there, the mum gets, because she's forgotten a lot of the stories, and so her aunt reminds her of a lot of these stories. And when she returns home, there's this really beautiful moment between her and Tien, and I will say that had me tearing up, the love and the joy between them. It was definitely a story about connection and communication, and I imagine if you are someone who's from a family where you are maybe second or even third generation child of immigrant parents, I feel this one would be even more powerful. Not only the child of immigrant parents, but also from the immigrant parents themselves, where they're losing that connection to their homeland, and they're losing some of the nuances and some of the things that made them that person they were. And yeah, it was beautifully written. The fairy stories themselves were very interesting because they were stories that I've seen before but written in new ways, and I really did love the Cinderella one with the magic fish. But it wasn't, I actually preferred the side of the modern day with the parents and Tien and his parents. And I also absolutely, the art in this is gorgeous, and I love how the colour tone shifts. So when we're in present day and the real world, we're real world present day, it's red. When we are in the fairy tales, it's these bluey purples. And then we also get flashbacks to his real world but history and his parents' story, and that's yellow. And I thought it was such a beautiful way to separate the timelines without making it a really big deal. And I really liked the art in this, to be honest. It's quite simple. It's not like super detailed, but it's enough that I don't know, there was something, as the title suggests with the magic fish, there was something magical about this. I've given it 4 stars. I liked the fairy tales. There were 3 different fairy tales in this, and I think it would have done well with 2. But yeah, I did have a really lovely time. I can see why people love it so much, and it's definitely one I will return to in the future. So 4 stars, not really much more I can say. I definitely have at least one more thing, because the Amazing Readathon, we only have one more leg to go, and so I do have a book set aside for that. Hopefully I'll be back soon with another update. Same day, a little bit later, but we had the detour pop up for the Amazing Readathon, and the challenge was to start a new book and read 50 pages. So I quickly grabbed the last manga that was on my TBR for this month. We have Confessions of a Shy Baker Volume 2 by Masami Ito. This is a series I really want to love, but the first book I had doubts. The second book I'm really starting to dislike. Toshimitsu. I understand that he's uncomfortable being out and proud gay, but the way he treats Gon, his boyfriend, even in their home, he's almost homophobic towards himself. And it just makes me very uncomfortable. A lot of people hate the fact that he's, you know, watching food and calories and stuff like that. But again, it's all things that has been discussed between him and his boyfriend. His boyfriend is okay with it. But I am getting a little bit tired of every meal he has to explain how he's reduced the calories. And I'm like, you don't need to explain this. I get it's the author telling the audience, like, if you want to make this recipe, this is why it's a good idea. But it just comes across as patronizing when he's constantly telling Gon, oh yeah, this is reduces fat by this, and this has reduced the calories by that. It's like, it goes too far. And I have started to skip the baking bit now, because it is starting to get boring and I'm just not interested. I'm more interested in the story around the baking than the baking itself, and I found that this is kind of hitting surface level issues for me in regards to the LGBTQ. There is so much that could be done in a bit more detail, and it's great that it's bringing attention to different aspects of what it's like to be queer and to live in the community. But when they've got things like Gon's niece comes over and stays with them, and we get a tiny little slither of a chapter where they were talking to her and she was asking these questions, and you realise it's because she thinks she might also be gay, but they don't actively properly talk about it, and it's done so quickly. It's just coming across a little bit too surface level-y for me. And I certainly think Gon needs to be stepping up and challenging his boyfriend over some of the things that he's saying and doing. I don't know if I actually want to continue this series now. I might give the third one a try, but the rage I felt at points with this, while some bits were great, that just really got to me. And yeah, I think this might be a series DNF, even though it does have a couple of really cute wholesome moments, and I do love the art in here. But I don't like how Gon is treated, and he does not deserve that. And I understand that there are complications. I understand why. I keep forgetting his bloody name. Toshi is hesitant, but there's hesitant and there's treating your boyfriend like actual shit because you have your own insecurities. And he falls more into that category. Gave this one 3 stars, just barely. But I think this one will be a series DNF for me, which is a shame. Anyway, I still have 2 more books I want to get to this month, so I'm going to try and get on and start at least one of those today. Hopefully be back soon with another update. I am not kidding you when I say there is no better feeling than when you think you've failed an achievement and then you realise that you didn't. So when I was totting up all of my books, I was like, oh, so close to inadvertently and completely unplanned did 30 and 30. And then I realised that I'd read one final manga on the last day of June that I'd forgotten to log, which was My Hero Academia volume 22? Yes, 22. Which meant that pushed me over 30 and 30. So without even meaning to, I did my first ever, well, I've done a 30 and 30 before, but that was purely manga. It's the first time where I've done 30 and 30 where it included manga and novels. So yeah, this isn't even everything because a lot of it was ebooks, but physically, here is my stack. Oh, my arm is shaking. It's incredible. I did not intend to do that. I have logged all my books now on Corepile. Even though I've written the manga down and I've got my ratings for them, I haven't filled all of the information in. I am a bit behind and I had 22 to log. But in terms of like stats and things like that, if you are interested in those kind of things, I read 8 novels and 22 manga and graphic novels. For my novels, my average rating was a 3.9. So it was a very solid month. I haven't worked out my manga. Editing Kirsty, I'm sure, will tell you here, but it's going to be very, very high, like 4.5 average, I reckon, because there was 1 2-star, a couple of 3s, but everything else was 4, 4.5 or 5 stars. So it was great. I just got the 1 5-star and that was Coerced by Ice, which is a shame. It would have been nice to have gotten more 5 stars this month, but I did have a really solid month and I've definitely found a couple of new authors that are now on my radar to check out. And one of the books that I read for Jona's vlog, I have already started the sequel, because I found it on Spotify, so Jona and I are both reading it this month. Impromptu buddy read. So yeah, it was an incredible month. I do feel like I am a little bit fatigued from it though. I've read a couple of manga and I have started a couple of books, but I have been struggling with motivation to want to read so far in July, but I am also having some haywire chaos problems with sleep and migraines, worse than usual, so that also has been hindering my reading. But as far as June went, you know, the Amazing Readathon was amazing. It was a really lovely community of people in the group that I was in. I felt really pushed and really motivated. I loved that we knew beforehand what the prompts were going to be, so even though we didn't know the order, we at least had an idea of what was coming. That I really appreciated, and I hope that that continues for next year. And yeah, it was a fantastic month of reading, and like I said, that slump, no, I will not be talking about that anymore because we are over that now. And the universe be kind, it's not going to happen again this year and we're going to be on a steady rhythm now. So I have no intention this month in July of getting that many done, but as long as I can get, you know, 5 to 6 a month done for the rest of the year, I will be happy with that. And also big celebrations, because with that big push in manga that again wasn't planned, it just happened, I have already hit my manga reading goal for the year. I set myself the target of 75 books and I'm now on 76, 77 as of this morning. That is fantastic. I have hit that, so now I'm just going to try and get a few more of my novels done and try and push that number up, but I'm not going to rush books because then that'll take away from the enjoyment. But June has been incredible. I think it's my best reading month ever, if I'm perfectly honest, with the combo of books and manga, and I am absolutely overjoyed, if now a little bit tired, a little bit fatigued, and ready to not have such an intensive readathon. This month I've just got the 1 week Summerween, and then August I'm taking off of anything except mood reading. But we'll talk about that throughout July and all of that. I know this is a mammoth video. It is longer, probably going to be the longest video I have ever put on my channel, and that is already at like 1 hour and 5 minutes. If I can get this below 1 hour and 15, I will be shocked. But I had a lot to talk about. Whether you watched the entire thing or you've just skipped to this little end bit, the TLDR bit, thank you so much for your support. It's always appreciated. Let me know in the comments what your favourite or some of your favourite things that you read throughout June were. For me, novels wise, it was absolutely Black Heart Nights by Law Eve, as well as Coerced by Ice by Nalini Singh, and Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V. Schwab. All 3 of those books were absolutely fantastic and I had a great time with all 3 of them. And then for manga, absolutely continuing on with the My Hero Academia reread has been fantastic, and I've read a couple more now that I would like to continue. I've also got Bookshops and Bone Dust. It was such a good month when you ignore the books that I read for Jona's vlog. But other than that, it was a fantastic month. So yeah, let me know what some of your favourites of June were. If you didn't get any reading done or you don't really want to say anything, just give it a thumbs up and a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. In the meantime, I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the significantly shorter next one. Bye!